My name is Renee Carver. I'm 49. And I didn't realize my life was about to split into a before and an after until a manila folder showed up in a break room that smelled like sheet cake and burnt coffee. It was supposed to be a simple night, a clean ending, a plaque, some handshakes, a few tired jokes from people who'd watched me grind my way through 28 years of early mornings, overtime, and deadlines that always mattered more than birthdays. Kellerman printing had been my whole adult life. Not in a romantic way, more like how a scar becomes part of your body. You stop noticing it until someone points to it and says, "That must have hurt." That Thursday, the break room was packed. Men from the binder line, women from pre-press, a couple folks from accounting who never smiled unless the numbers behaved. My supervisor had actually put on a button-down shirt like we were attending church. There was a generic banner hung crooked across the back wall. Happy retirement. They'd gotten a sheet cake with my name in blue frosting. Blue. As if the cake decorator couldn't imagine a woman lasting 28 years in a place that ate people alive. I was standing near the snack table when Nolan, my buddy from the binder line, 15 years of the same jokes and the same stubborn loyalty, started telling me about his boat. Got it off Craigslist, he said, eyes bright like a kid. Steal of a deal. Only needs minor repairs. Minor, I repeated, because I'd learned over the years that when Nolan said minor, he meant potentially fatal. He laughed. Okay, fine. The engine coughs like a smoker, but I can rebuild it. We were debating whether a Mercury outboard from the 90s was worth saving when I felt it. The shift. You know that moment. When a room changes temperature without the thermostat moving. When laughter doesn't stop, but it thins out, like someone pulled a thread and everything started unraveling. I looked up, and there he was. Grant. My husband of 19 years, wearing black. Not a suit. Grant didn't do suits. Just a black dress shirt, black slacks, like he'd dressed for a funeral and decided my retirement party was close enough. He walked in holding a manila folder, not tucked under his arm casually, held in both hands like he was carrying something important, something fragile, something he wanted everyone to see. He didn't scan the room, didn't nod at Nolan, didn't smile at my brother Neil, who was standing near the back with his wife Maria, looking proud of me the way family is supposed to. Grant didn't look at anyone except me. He walked straight across the break room and stopped about 3 feet away, close enough that I could see the tightness in his jaw, the tiny twitch in his cheek he got when he thought he had the upper hand. He lifted the folder. "Here," he said, loud enough for half the room to hear. "Sign these." The words hit like cold water. The conversations didn't just fade, they died, like someone yanked the plug on the whole room. I didn't ask what it was, not because I already knew, because the way Grant stood there, the posture, the performance, told me he wanted me to react. He wanted the scene. He wanted me to beg. He wanted me to give him something he could later retell with dramatic hand motions and a victim voice. I reached out and took the folder. My fingers were steady. That's the part people don't understand about shock. Sometimes shock doesn't make you scream. Sometimes shock makes you quiet. I opened it. Petition for dissolution. Divorce papers. His signature was already on page 4, dated 3 days ago. So he'd signed them before he came here, which meant this wasn't an emotional decision made in a fight. This was a plan. There were bullet points about property division, spousal support, the house, typed out clean like a grocery list. The irony of seeing your life reduced to lines and numbers, this person gets this, that person gets that, is that it makes you realize how long someone has been living like you're already gone. Grant held out a pen. He'd brought it. Of course he did. I heard Nolan inhale sharply next to me. Somebody near the fridge whispered, "Oh my God." And in that tiny pocket of silence, with 30 pairs of eyes on my face, my husband waited for me to fall apart. I didn't. I sat down at the table. I flipped to the first signature line. And I signed my name. Once, twice, again. Grant's eyebrows lifted slightly, like he'd expected a different show. I didn't read the fine print. I didn't argue over percentages. I didn't throw the folder back at him. Because I understood something in that moment that took me 19 years to learn. If someone is willing to humiliate you in public, they're not looking for a conversation. They're looking for control. I signed every line. When I finished, I closed the folder and handed it back. Grant's lips parted, like he was about to say something. Maybe a speech, maybe a final dagger. Instead, I stood, leaned in just close enough that only he could hear me, and I whispered, "You have no idea what you just did to yourself." My voice was calm. Not a threat screamed through tears. A fact spoken like weather. His eyes flicked, just once. A tiny nervous blink. A crack in his confidence that vanished almost instantly. Then I turned back to Nolan like nothing had happened. You were saying something about the carburetor, I said. Nolan stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Renee, he murmured, barely audible. But I was already reaching for a plastic fork, already picking up the thread of our earlier conversation, because the truth was, I refused to give Grant the satisfaction of watching me break. That's when I heard it. Clap. Slow at first, then again, and again. I turned my head. My daughter was standing near the doorway. Tessa, 18 years old, my baby, my only child. She had Grant's smirk on her face like it was a birthright, and she was clapping. Not confused clapping, not awkward clapping because she didn't know what else to do. This was applause, a performance, like her father had just won an award. My chest didn't crack. It didn't explode. It went strangely hollow. Grant took the folder and walked out. Tessa followed him without looking at me. Not even a glance, not even a flinch. The door shut. The room stayed frozen for a beat too long. Then Nolan cleared his throat like he was trying to restart the world. Man, he said quietly, that was cold. Someone laughed, but it came out wrong, like a cough. My supervisor stepped toward me, voice low. Renee, do you need a minute? I looked at him and smiled. A real smile. Not because I was okay. Because I wanted them to understand I wasn't going to bleed for entertainment. I'm good, I said. And I meant it in the only way that mattered. I stayed another hour. I ate cake. I shook hands. I accepted my plaque with my engraved nameplate like the night hadn't been poisoned. People tried to meet my eyes and then looked away. Some gave me pity. Some gave me admiration. Most just gave me fear, because nothing scares people like a woman who doesn't react the way she's supposed to. When I left around 8:30, I walked to my car under the yellow parking lot lights and drove home to the house I'd bought with my father's inheritance. The house Grant always called ours when he was bragging about it. And yours when Bill showed up. I pulled into the driveway. The porch light was off. That alone told me everything. Inside, the air felt wrong. Not haunted, not dramatic. Just rearranged. Grant's car was gone. Most of his clothes were gone, too. His work shirts, his shoes, the cologne that always made my head hurt. He'd taken what was easy to carry. Left the furniture, left the heavy things, left the reminders. The couch I'd picked out, the bookshelf I'd built with my own hands one winter when Grant said he was too busy to help. The rug we bought at an outlet mall, like we were building a future instead of decorating a lie. I sat down in the quiet and stared at the man-shaped empty spaces around the house. My phone buzzed. A text from Neil Maria's freaking out. Said that was brutal. You good? I typed back, I'm great. Talk tomorrow. And then I set the phone down and let the silence wrap around me like a decision. Because Grant thought that folder was the end of the story. He thought embarrassing me would make me desperate. He thought I would panic and negotiate. He thought I would be so busy trying to save face that I wouldn't notice what he'd missed for 19 years. I had been doing the paperwork. I had been paying the bills. I had been building the life. And if he wanted to turn it into a war, fine. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and opened the drawer where I kept a small notebook of account numbers and documents. Nothing secret, nothing illegal. Just organized. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I whispered to the empty house, like I was making a promise to myself. Time to make some calls. The first week after the party felt like standing in the middle of a ruined room and realizing the person who smashed everything had already driven away. Music still echoing, dust still settling, but the damage done. No calls from Grant, no texts, no dramatic "we need to talk." Just silence so clean it almost sounded rehearsed. And the worst part was, I recognized it. Grant had always used silence like a weapon. If I asked where the money went, he went quiet. If I wanted to talk about Tessa's attitude, he went quiet. If I said I was tired of being the only adult in the room, he went quiet. Silence was how he punished me for asking for basic decency. So that week I didn't chase him. I kept my routine. My body didn't know I was retired. It still woke up like it had for 28 years. Before dawn, muscle memory dragging me out of sleep like a bell I couldn't unhear. 6 o'clock, coffee. 7, breakfast. 8, the quiet house that felt too large without someone else's footsteps. I walked through rooms and noticed what he'd taken. His shave kit, his favorite hoodie, the expensive blender he swore he needed for protein shakes. But he'd left the things that mattered most, because those things weren't portable. The house, the paper trail, the truth. Tuesday morning, I put on a simple blouse and drove to the bank. I'd made the appointment the day after the party, while the taste of cake frosting was still in my mouth and my daughter's applause still rang in my ears. The bank was bright and cold, like it was designed to keep emotions from growing. A woman named Michelle met me in a small office with glass walls and polite privacy. She was early 30s, neat hair, sharp eyes, the kind of professional who could hear divorce and not flinch. She smiled. "Miss Carver, come on in." I sat down, set my purse on the chair beside me, and placed my folder on her desk. Not a manila folder. Mine was a thin black file folder, simple, deliberate, the kind that said I came prepared. Michelle clicked through my profile, her nails tapping lightly against the keyboard. "Okay," she said. "Joint checking account with Grant Carver. Savings in your name only. Retirement distributions. Looks like you have a few accounts here." I nodded once. "I need to make some changes," I said. "Of course." She didn't ask why. She didn't try to soften the tone. She just waited, pen hovering over a notepad. "I want to open a new checking account," I said, "in my name only, and I want to move money from the joint account into it." Michelle's expression stayed professional, but her eyes sharpened the way they do when someone says something that means this is about to get messy. "How much would you like to transfer?" she asked. I looked at the screen where the joint balance was displayed. $9,200. It was almost funny. Grant had always acted like money was this mysterious force, like bills just happened, like groceries just appeared, like the mortgage paid itself because the universe liked us. And there it was, numbers. Quiet, honest, unromantic. "Half," I said, "exactly half." Michelle nodded once. No judgment, just efficiency. "Okay, that would be $4,600. "Yes." She printed forms. I signed them. No shaking hands, no tears. 20 minutes later, I walked out of the bank with a new account number, a temporary card, and a receipt so clean it felt like a line drawn in ink. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a moment and stared at the receipt. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that I had just proven to myself I could move forward without begging anyone for permission. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer. My brother Neil had given me the name the night he texted after the party. Martin Wickham, office above a bagel shop on Oak Street. "No nonsense," Neil had said. "He's solid. Actually calls you back." The building smelled like toasted sesame seeds and old paperwork. Martin's office was cramped but tidy, the kind of place where nothing was decorative because everything was functional. He came out to greet me himself, mid-50s, sharp jaw, tired eyes. He looked like a man who'd heard every version of "I didn't think they'd do that" and stopped being surprised 20 years ago. He shook my hand. "You're Renee," he said. "Neil told me about the party." I sat down across from his desk and slid Grant's divorce petition toward him. Martin opened it, flipped through the pages, then looked up at me with a slow, amused exhale. "Your husband served you divorce papers at your retirement party," he said, in front of coworkers. I didn't answer. I just held his gaze. He smirked faintly. "He's got flair. I'll give him that." Martin skimmed again, then paused. "You read these before signing?" "Not really." His eyebrows lifted. "Let me guess. You didn't read them at all." "Was there a point?" I said. He wanted out. I wasn't going to beg. Martin leaned back, studying me like he was measuring whether I was going to be a problem client or a powerhouse. Then he smiled. "Fair enough," he said. "Let's see what we're working with." 10 minutes in, he started chuckling. Not kindly. More like someone watching a magician attempt a trick with the wrong deck of cards. "He's asking for spousal support," Martin said, tapping a page, "and he's expecting... wow. He's expecting around $2,500 a month based on these numbers." I felt something sharp flicker inside me. "Based on what numbers?" I asked. "His version," Martin said. "His version of your income and his sacrifice." I exhaled through my nose. Grant had worked, yes, but he'd coasted for years, drifting between projects, ideas, plans, none of which ever turned into anything stable. Meanwhile, I'd been the one who got up at 5, drove through dark mornings, worked overtime when catalogs were due, handled the benefits, the taxes, the repairs, the real world. Martin flipped another page. "And he's claiming the house is marital property," he continued. "He wants it sold and split 50-50. I felt my mouth go still. Martin pointed at a line. "He thinks there's about $110,000 in equity. He wants his half, $55,000. Martin looked up at me, eyes amused. "Anything you want to tell me about that?" I stared at him for a beat. Then I said it simply, because it deserved simplicity. "The house is paid off." Martin blinked. I watched the surprise shift into interest. "Paid off when?" he asked. 4 months ago," I said. "I pulled money from my retirement fund, took the penalty, cleared the mortgage." Martin's pen stopped moving. "And the deed?" he asked. "In my name," I said. "Only mine. We set it up that way in 2001 because the down payment came from my dad's inheritance. Grant agreed at the time, for taxes. Martin set the papers down slowly, like he'd just found the hidden trapdoor in a house of lies. Does he know you paid it off? Martin asked. He knew we were close, I said. But I don't think he knows I finished it. Martin let out a low laugh that held no sympathy for Grant. Oh, he said, smiling now. Oh, man. Then he leaned forward, suddenly fully awake. He's going to lose his mind, Martin said. If he thinks he's getting 55 grand from your equity and he walks into court and finds out the mortgage is paid and the deed is only yours. He shook his head, like it was almost too easy. What else you got? He asked. I took a breath, and for the first time since the party, I felt something that wasn't just numb. Control. I rolled my pension into an IRA the day after he served me, I said. And my savings account? It's in my name only. He never tracked it. It's around $52,000. Martin's smile widened. Good, he said. Very good. We spent another hour documenting everything. The truck, paid off, titled to me. Grant's car, his, but with loan details that mattered. And then I hesitated. Tessa's car, I said quietly. Martin looked up. Your daughter's car. It's titled in my name, I said. I bought it. I told her it was her graduation present, but legally, it's mine. Martin stared for a moment, then nodded slowly. Keep that in mind, he said. We'll come back to it. When we finished, he walked me out. I'll file our response by Friday, Martin said. He's going to flip when he reads it. That night, my phone rang around 8. The screen showed Tessa. For a second, my stomach did that old reflex thing, hope flaring like a match, even when you know you're standing in rain. I answered anyway. Dad, she said. Not Mom, not Renee, not anything cruel. Just, Dad. You need to help him find an apartment, she said, like she was reminding me I forgot to pick up milk. I blinked. I need to what? He's staying with friends, she said quickly, and I could hear the way she was trying to make it sound temporary and normal. It's awkward. He needs his own place. I leaned back in my kitchen chair, staring at the tile, like it could explain how my daughter had become this person in the span of one party. Then he should get his own place, I said. Her voice sharpened. He doesn't have enough money. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was the most predictable thing in the world. He has half the checking account, I said. $4,600. That's not enough, she snapped. Not in a good area, not anywhere safe. He needs help and you're just... I let her talk until she ran out of steam. Then I said carefully, quietly, so every word could land. Tessa, your father served me divorce papers at my retirement party, in front of everyone, and you clapped. There was silence on the line. It wasn't regretful silence. It was stunned silence, like she'd forgotten that detail mattered. Okay, but you're supposed to be the mature one, she said finally, voice rising like that phrase was a shield. I stared at my steak on the plate in front of me. I'd cooked it exactly the way I liked, medium rare, because there was no one left in this house to complain it was too bloody. I am being mature, I said. I signed the papers without argument. That's not mature, she insisted. That's cold. I chewed slowly, because the truth deserved patience. How'd you know I was eating steak? I asked. What? I can hear you chewing, she snapped, like that proved something. I swallowed. Good ears, I said. Maybe you should use them to listen when people tell you things. She made a frustrated sound. You're unbelievable, she said, and then, click, she hung up. I set the phone down. For a second, I sat there looking at the steak. Then I cut another bite, because hunger didn't stop just because your family decided you were disposable. 9 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Neil, Maria's been texting with Grant, he said, sounding exhausted already. Apparently you're the bad guy now. I stared out the kitchen window into the dark yard. Shocking, I said. Neil sighed. He's saying you hid money, that you tricked him, that the house should be his too. The house has been in my name for 19 years, I said. He just never paid attention. Neil gave a short laugh, half amusement, half disbelief. Maria thinks you should give him half anyway because it's the right thing to do, he admitted. I felt my jaw tighten. Maria can think whatever she wants, I said. She wasn't the one who got humiliated. Neil hesitated. Just giving you a heads up. He's on the warpath. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Another call. This time it was Maria. I answered, because I had learned something important about people like Maria. If you don't let them speak, they'll turn your silence into guilt. Renee, she said immediately, we need to talk about Grant. No, we don't, I replied. He's devastated, she pushed. He's crying every day. He thought you two would work it out, and you just signed those papers like he meant nothing. I stared at the wall, calm as ice. They were divorce papers, I said. That's what you do with them. Maria kept going in circles about how I should have fought, how marriage deserves effort, how making a scene meant Grant was serious, how maybe he did it publicly because he thought I'd brush it off privately. I let her talk until she ran out of righteousness. Then I said softly, "He made a statement." Maria paused. "And now he gets to deal with it," I finished. She huffed, furious. "You paid off the mortgage without telling him," she accused, like that was some betrayal. I smiled, slow, cold, unashamed. "Men like you end up alone," Maria snapped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just told the truth. "Men like him end up broke," I said. "Women like me end up in paid-off houses with money in the bank." Maria made a sound like she'd swallowed something sharp. Then she hung up. The house went quiet again. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the notebook of account numbers I'd pulled out earlier. Grant thought he'd planned everything. Tessa thought she could clap and still be protected. Maria thought guilt could move me like it used to. They were all operating on the old version of me, the version that swallowed disrespect to keep peace. But the peace had already been destroyed. So I made the next call. Not to beg, not to bargain, to prepare. Because the truth was, I didn't say "you have no idea what you just did to yourself" as a dramatic line. I said it because Grant had just made the mistake of thinking humiliation was power. And now I was going to show him what power actually looked like. 2 weeks after the party, the house started feeling less like a crime scene and more like a place I could actually breathe in again. The quiet stopped sounding accusing. The walls stopped feeling like witnesses. I was reorganizing the kitchen. Slow, methodical work, the kind you do when your mind needs something repetitive to chew on, when I noticed Tessa's laptop sitting on the counter. She must have left it behind the night she stormed out with her father. At the time, I hadn't said anything. I figured she'd realize eventually and come back for it. Now it sat there, half closed, charger still plugged in, like it was waiting for her to finish a thought. I picked it up, intending to shut it down and slide it into a drawer. That's when I saw the screen. A message thread was open. Not an email, not homework. A text conversation. At the top of the screen was a name with a heart emoji next to it. Lena. I froze. Not because I recognized the name, but because I didn't. For a moment, I told myself the same lie everyone tells at the edge of a truth they don't want. This isn't my business. But then I saw Grant's name in the thread. And the timestamps. And the tone. I sat down at the kitchen table, laptop still open, my pulse loud in my ears. The first message I read wasn't even dramatic. It was casual, familiar. Grant. She's still clueless, thinks everything's fine. My stomach tightened. I scrolled. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone disarming a bomb, aware that once you see what's inside, you can't unsee it. The messages went back months. 3 months. 4. Grant complaining about me. How I was always tired. How I didn't appreciate him. How I'd changed. Lena responding with sympathy and flattery in equal measure. You deserve better. She doesn't see what she has. Once you're free, everything will make sense. There were pictures, gym selfies, tight shirts, that kind of curated confidence that screamed temporary. Then the messages shifted, from emotional to strategic. Grant. Once the house sells and I get my half, we'll be set. Plus support. Should be close to $80K to start. I stopped breathing. Lena. That's amazing. We can go anywhere. You deserve this. I scrolled again. Grant. She has no idea I've been talking to you. She trusts me way too much. A cold, hollow laugh escaped my throat before I could stop it. Trust. What a strange word to use when you're actively dismantling someone's life. More messages. Plans. Apartments they liked online. Cities they could see themselves in. Jokes about how I'd roll over because that's what I always did. And then the one that sealed it. Grant. I'm waiting for the right moment. Going to make it public so she can't argue. Public. My retirement party. The folder. The performance. I closed my eyes and let the picture come together. This wasn't just a divorce. It was a heist. Grant hadn't just wanted out. He wanted capital. I took my phone out and started taking pictures of the screen. Every message, every plan, every joke about my money. I made sure timestamps were visible. Names were clear. Nothing left to interpretation. When I finished, I shut the laptop, slid it into its case, and placed it by the front door. Tessa could pick it up whenever she wanted, but the truth had already left the house. I sent the photos to Martin. Didn't add commentary, didn't dramatize. Just evidence. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Martin. Well, this changes things. Another buzz. Martin. Forwarding to my paralegal. This helps our case. A lot. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. I didn't feel victorious. I felt validated. Because there's something deeply unsettling about suspecting betrayal without proof. Proof makes it solid. Heavy. Real. I didn't confront Grant. Not yet. Letting him think he was still in control felt smarter. That illusion was doing half my work for me. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was folding laundry. Unknown number, I answered. Ms. Carver? a woman's voice said, crisp and efficient. Yes. This is Dana Holt, calling on behalf of your husband regarding the petition for dissolution. Grant's lawyer. Of course. We haven't received a response yet, she continued. The deadline is approaching. My client is anxious to move things along. I smiled to myself. My lawyer is handling it, I said. And who would that be? Martin Wickham. There was a pause. Long enough to matter. I see, she said finally. Well, please inform Mr. Wickham that we're interested in expediting the process. I pictured Grant pacing somewhere, confidence starting to crack, wondering why I wasn't panicking. I'll let him know you called, I said. I hung up and texted Martin. He replied almost immediately. Martin, let her wait. Filing Friday, including the affair. That afternoon, I ran into Paige. The grocery store was crowded, carts squeaking, produce section buzzing with people pretending to care about avocados. Paige was loading her cart like she was preparing for winter. She spotted me first. Renee, she said, smiling too wide. I heard about the party. Did you? I replied. That took a lot of courage, she said. Grant finally standing up for himself. I tilted my head slightly. Courage, I repeated. She nodded. You know, ending a marriage isn't easy, especially when you feel trapped. I reached for a bag of apples, unbothered. Funny, I said. He didn't look trapped when he was planning his future with another woman. Paige's smile flickered. What? Lena, I said calmly. Gym girl. Been around for months. Lots of messages about how they were going to use my money to start fresh. The color drained from Paige's face. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Sure you do, I said. He told her the house would sell, that he'd get half, that I'd just sign and smile. Paige swallowed hard. I should go, she said quickly, grabbing her cart. Tell Grant I said hi, I added lightly, and tell Lena that the $80,000 they were planning on is looking more like zero. Paige didn't respond. She just walked away. Friday came. Martin filed the response. 14 pages. Detailed. Precise. Brutal in the quiet way truth always is. Every incorrect assumption corrected. Every asset documented. Every message printed and labeled. When Martin emailed me the copy, I read it twice. Not because I enjoyed it, because I needed to see in black and white that I hadn't imagined any of it. At the end of the document was a polite paragraph explaining that based on Grant's work history, his capability to earn full-time income, and the evidence of his relationship during the marriage, spousal support was inappropriate. Attached as exhibits were the screenshots. Every single one. I called Martin. There's one more thing, I said. The car, he said immediately. Yes. I explained the situation, how it was titled in my name, how I'd let Tessa use it, how she'd taken her father's side without knowing the truth. Martin didn't hesitate. If she thinks everything she has is guaranteed, he said, it might be time to remind her otherwise. I stared at the wall. You're right, I said. Add it to the list. He chuckled softly. I'll make a note. That weekend, Nolan called and asked if I wanted to help him work on his boat. We spent Saturday sanding the deck under a hot sun, the kind of physical labor that keeps your thoughts from spiraling. Your ex still freaking out? He asked casually, cracking open a drink. Probably, I said. Haven't heard from him? Nope. Nolan nodded knowingly. Best place to be, he said. When they stop hearing from you, they start imagining things. And imagination does more damage than arguments ever could. I wiped sweat from my forehead and thought about Grant reading that response. The screenshots, the corrected numbers, the reality. And for the first time since the break room, I felt something close to anticipation. Because the fantasy Grant had built, about money, about control, about me rolling over, it was starting to collapse. And next, he was going to feel it. 4 weeks in, the fallout stopped being abstract. It stopped living in paperwork and phone calls and legal language. It rang my doorbell. I was in the garage, sorting through my tools, lining them up the way I always did when my thoughts needed order. Wrenches by size, sockets by depth, everything in its place. The doorbell rang once, sharp, demanding. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. Tessa stood there with her hand already outstretched. I need the spare key to the Mazda, she said. No greeting, no hesitation. Just entitlement delivered like muscle memory. I leaned against the doorframe and looked at her. Hello to you too. Mom, I'm serious, she snapped. I lost mine. I held her gaze. The Mazda is titled in my name, I said calmly. It's my car. Her eyes widened, like I'd just spoken a foreign language. You gave it to me for graduation. I let you use a car that I own, I corrected. There's a difference. She scoffed and pushed past me into the house like she still belonged everywhere without question. This is ridiculous, she said, pacing. Dad told me you'd probably pull something like this. I closed the door slowly behind her. I need the car for work and school, she continued. You can't just take it back. I folded my arms. You can walk. She stared at me. Walk? She repeated. It's summer. It's hot. I nodded once. Welcome to the real world. It's full of hot days. Her face twisted, anger and disbelief colliding. You're being a jerk. No, I said evenly. I'm being practical. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling Dad. Good luck with that, I replied. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. 30 seconds later, I heard the Mazda's door open in the driveway. Then nothing. Then again, nothing. I'd removed the battery that morning. Not out of spite. Out of preparation. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Grant. You disconnected Tessa's car, he snapped the second I answered. I removed the battery from my car, I corrected. The one I've been letting her borrow. She needs that car, he barked. You're punishing her for supporting me. I leaned against the kitchen counter, voice steady. I'm teaching her that the person who pays for things gets to make decisions about those things. She's going to hate you. I paused. She already clapped when you served me divorce papers at my retirement party, I said quietly. How much worse can it get? Silence. Then Grant exhaled sharply. You've changed, he muttered. No, I said. I just stopped pretending the last 5 years weren't miserable. I hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Tessa. This time she was crying. I'm sorry, she said quickly. Okay? I'm sorry I clapped. I'm sorry I was rude. I need the car. I closed my eyes. Come by tomorrow, I said. 2 o'clock. We'll talk. She hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I reinstalled the battery, just long enough to confirm the car still worked. Then I removed it again. The next day, Tessa arrived right on time. No attitude this time. Just red eyes and shoulders that didn't look quite as tall as they had a week ago. She sat on the couch, hands folded, staring at the floor. Can I please use the car? She asked quietly. Depends, I said. She looked up. On what? On whether you understand why you're in this position. Her lips pressed together. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften it either. Because you clapped, I said. Because you took your father's side without knowing anything. Because you've been entitled and rude. Because you seem to think the world owes you things just for existing. She wiped her eyes. Dad told me you were hiding money, she said. That you were trying to screw him over. I nodded once. He told you a lot of things, I said. He didn't tell you he's been planning this divorce for months. He didn't tell you he has a girlfriend. He didn't tell you they were counting my money before I even knew what was happening. Her head snapped up. He has a girlfriend? Yes, I said. She's 34, works at a gym. They've been texting about all the places they'll go once he gets the settlement. Tessa stared at me like the ground had shifted. He didn't tell me that. No, I said, but you still picked a side. Silence filled the room. I stood. Here's the deal, I said. You want the car? You pay the insurance. $300 a month. You want the credit card I gave you? You pay your own charges. You want my help with college? You start acting like an adult who understands that respect goes both ways. She nodded slowly. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need, I said. But until you decide, the car stays here and the credit card gets canceled. That's not fair, she whispered. I met her eyes. Life's not fair. She left without the keys. That night, Neil called. Look, he said, sighing. I get that you're mad, but Tessa's just a kid. She's 18, I replied, old enough to clap at my humiliation, old enough to face consequences. 2 days later, Tessa texted, said she'd pay the insurance, said she'd pay her credit card, asked if she could please have the car back. I told her to come by Saturday at 10. She showed up exactly at 10. No makeup, no attitude, just tired. I had the insurance paperwork ready. She signed the monthly payments, linked her checking account, and when everything was done, I handed her the keys. She walked toward the door, then stopped. I'm sorry, she said softly, for clapping, for everything. I nodded. I appreciate that. Are we okay? Not yet, I said, but we're getting there. She left. 8 weeks in, the cracks in Grant's plan were turning into holes. And soon, he was going to show up himself. 8 weeks after the retirement party, Grant finally stopped hiding behind other people. I was replacing the weather stripping on the front door, one of those small, practical tasks you do when you're trying to fix what actually can be fixed. When a car I didn't recognize pulled into the driveway. A compact sedan. Cheap. Rental level clean. The passenger door opened. Grant stepped out. For a second, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked drastically different, but because the confidence was gone. His shoulders were tighter. His jaw worked like he was chewing on something sour. The black shirt uniform had been replaced by a wrinkled polo that didn't quite fit anymore. Paige was in the driver's seat. Of course she was. I didn't stop working. Grant walked up the path and stopped at the bottom of the porch steps like he wasn't sure he was allowed any closer. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" I asked, still focused on the doorframe. "Our divorce response," he snapped. "What your lawyer filed." I glanced at him. "You mean the facts?" He scowled. "You attached my private messages." "I attached evidence relevant to the divorce," I said calmly. "Your plans to use marital assets for your new life. Pretty relevant." Paige got out of the car and leaned against the driver's door, arms crossed, suddenly very interested in the clouds. Grant took a step up. "I lived in this house for 19 years, he said, voice rising. "I deserve half of it." I set my screwdriver down and turned to face him. "You lived here," I said. "You didn't own it." "That's not how marriage works." "It is when the deed is in one name," I replied, "and the mortgage was paid by one person." His face reddened. "I contributed to the marriage," he argued. "I gave you the best years of my life." "You're 46, I said. "You've got plenty of years left. Go live them with Lena." His mouth opened, closed. "What?" he demanded. I tilted my head. "Oh," I said lightly. "You didn't know?" She stopped responding after the filing, once she realized there was no $80,000 payout. Paige's head snapped up. Grant's face drained of color. "That's not," he started, then stopped. "Because it was." I stepped back and picked up my screwdriver again. "Where is she these days?" I asked casually. "Still at the gym? Or did she disappear the second things got complicated?" He didn't answer. Paige cleared her throat. "Grace," she started, then corrected herself awkwardly. "Grant, maybe we should go." Grant ignored her. "I can still fight this," he said. "Dana says a judge will see you're being unreasonable." "Martin says you're delusional," I replied. I trust him more. Grant's voice dropped. "The apartment wants $5,000 just to move in," he said. "First, last, deposit. I don't have that." "You have $4,600 from the joint account," I said. "That should cover something." "I need that for living expenses." "Then find a cheaper place," I said. "Not my problem." His eyes burned. "You're cruel," he said. I met his gaze. "No," I said. "I'm done. There's a difference." Paige finally moved, taking his arm. "Come on," she urged. "This isn't helping." Grant let her guide him back to the car, but before he got in, he turned around. "You're going to regret this," he said. I didn't hesitate. "I doubt it." They drove off. That evening, Martin called. "Dana filed an emergency motion," he said. "Temporary support. Hearing next Tuesday at 2. I smiled faintly. "I'll be there." "Bring everything," he said. "She's going to argue he can't support himself." "And we'll show he can," I replied, "and that he planned this." Exactly. The courtroom smells like old paper and floor cleaner. The judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had clearly seen every variation of entitlement disguised as hardship. Dana spoke first. 10 minutes of practiced sympathy. No income, no place to live, sacrificed career, emotional devastation. Grant sat beside her, nodding at the right moments, eyes downcast like he was auditioning for mercy. Then Martin stood. He didn't waste time. He presented Grant's work history, his ability to work full-time, the funds already withdrawn. Then he handed over the screenshots. Every message, every plan, every joke about how I'd roll over. The judge read silently for a long moment. Then she looked directly at Grant. "Mr. Carver," she said, "were you planning this divorce while still living in your wife's home?" Grant opened his mouth. She held up a hand. "Were you discussing anticipated divorce funds with another woman?" Silence. "Are you capable of working full-time?" "Yes," Grant muttered. The judge closed the folder. "Motion denied," she said flatly. "Temporary support is not appropriate. Asset division will proceed as filed." 35 minutes. That was all it took. Outside the courthouse, Grant stood frozen on the steps while Dana was already on her phone, moving on to her next client. Martin caught up with me by my car. "That went well," he said. "Better than expected." "Anything else I should know?" I asked. He smiled. Apparently Lena blocked him, deleted her socials, quit the gym. I laughed once. Shocking. "One more thing," Martin added. "She tried showing up at his gym. He quit the next day." I drove home lighter than I'd felt in months. The fantasy was gone. All that was left was reality. And Grant was finally standing in it. 2 weeks after the hearing, the phone rang while I was sanding the porch rail. I knew it was Martin before I even checked the screen. "They want to settle," he said, skipping pleasantries. I leaned the sandpaper against the railing and sat on the step. "Of course they do." He read the offer slowly, professionally. Grant would take the remainder of the joint checking, his personal belongings, his car, and a one-time payment from my savings. No house, no ongoing support, no future claims. "How much?" I asked. $3,500, Martin said. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was finally honest. Counter with 2,000, I said. Final. There was a pause. He won't like that. He doesn't have to, I replied. He can take it to trial. Martin exhaled through his nose. I'll call it in. An hour later, my phone buzzed. He accepted, Martin said. Dinah said Grant cried when he signed, claimed you ruined his life. I stared at the wood grain on the porch rail. Funny, I said. I thought he ruined it himself. The divorce finalized on a Thursday. I didn't go. I let the paperwork do what paperwork does best. Close a chapter without ceremony. I transferred $2,000 to Grant's account that afternoon and received confirmation that all claims were settled. That night, I grilled a steak and ate on the back porch as the sun went down, the air cooling in that soft way that feels like permission. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Dad's really struggling. He got a job, but the apartment he found is pretty bad. I typed back. He made his choices. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Can we have dinner sometime? Just us? I thought about it longer than I expected. Saturday night, I'll grill. Thanks, Mom. The dust didn't settle all at once. It came down slowly, like ash after a fire. Over the next 2 months, something resembling normal took shape. Tessa came by every other Saturday. We didn't talk much about Grant. We talked about her classes starting in the fall, about her job, about budgeting, real budgeting, the kind that hurts at first because numbers don't care how you feel. She paid her insurance on time, paid her credit card bill, asked questions instead of making demands. One Saturday, she showed up early and sat on the workbench while I changed the oil in my truck. Dad's dating again, she said. That was fast, I replied. Different woman. Older. Has money, she added, then hesitated. He asked me to help him with an apartment deposit. I wiped my hands and looked at her. What did you say? I said no, she said quietly. He's my dad, but he tried to take everything from you. I'm not helping him do that again. I nodded once. Good. She swallowed. He's mad at me now. He'll get over it, I said. Or he won't. Either way, you made the right call. She watched me work for a minute. I was a brat, she said. I thought you'd always pay for everything. When you stopped, it sucked. But I needed it. I looked at her then. Really looked. We're getting there, I said. 3 months after the divorce, Nolan finished his boat and took me out on the lake. We didn't catch anything. We didn't care. We just let the quiet do its job. You feel bad about him? Nolan asked, cracking open a soda. I thought about it. No, I said. I feel finished. 4 months after the divorce, I ran into Grant at the grocery store. Frozen foods aisle. Budget meals stacked in his cart. We stood there for a second like strangers remembering old lines. You look good, he said finally. Like you're okay. I am, I replied. Tessa says you grill together now, he said. That's good. She needs you. She does, I said. He looked down. I was wrong. About the money. About how this would go. I thought you'd roll over. Before the party, I said. He nodded. Yeah. I'm sorry for how I did it, he added. Not the divorce, but the party. For Tessa clapping. For all of it. I appreciate that, I said. Are we okay? He asked. We're done, I said, but we're not enemies. He smiled sadly. That's probably the best we can do. I grabbed my vegetables and walked away. I drove home to my house, the one I'd worked 28 years for. For quiet mornings. For decisions made without negotiation. For steaks whenever I wanted them. For a daughter who was learning that love doesn't mean unlimited access. Grant had served me those papers thinking he'd planned everything. Thinking humiliation was leverage. Thinking I'd hand over what I'd built because I always had before. He was wrong. The 80,000 he'd counted on became 2,000 and goodbye. The fantasy life collapsed the second it met reality. The peace I gained was worth every hour, every bill, every moment I finally stood my ground. Justice doesn't show.